Okay guys, I'm going to go over some additional factoring practice problems for you because I'm going to also be giving you your practice test for factoring, which has all the different kinds of factoring all mixed together in there. And anyway, so I want to do a little bit of extra review. And then tomorrow, which is Tuesday, between I think 2 and 3, between 2 and 3, I'll be available on Teams. If you want help with your practice test or you want to ask questions, you want to check on some problems, I'll be there. So I'll send you an email with a link. Probably it would have to be sometime afternoon, after 12 o'clock, I'll send you a link. Or you can just stop in your class, which is 8-2, just go under that, and I think you can just join. But anyway, I'll be there, and I'll just be on Teams in case anybody needs help. All right, so we're just gonna work a few problems. Number 1, let's go with x squared minus 10x plus 21. Now, some of you really have this down good, but some of you I know need some extra practice. If you look at this problem, I've got 3 terms. Now, I don't have that checklist in front of me, but the first thing I would do is look for a greatest common factor. You always do that first, and you always want to follow that little checklist, and I'll have that on your review. There is no greatest common factor. There's nothing that is in all 3 terms. Okay, so the next thing is look for a special pattern. Well, the only special pattern that could apply would be a perfect square because there's 3 terms. But 21 is not, the ends have to be squares to start with, and they're not. This doesn't have a square root. So that's going to take me down to the next step, which is crisscross. I notice there's no number here. Remember how that number really messes things up. There's no number here, so I'm just going to look at a crisscross. That top number, or I'm sorry, the last number goes on the top. The middle number goes on the bottom. Let me put my parentheses, get those set up. And x times x is going to give me the x squared. Now, I need to find 2 things that are going to multiply to 21, but that can add to a -7, or no, gosh, a -10. So the only real options I have are 1 and 21. That'll multiply to 21, but that's not going to get me to a 10. Or 3 and 7. Like, okay, 3 and 7 I know can get to a 10 somehow. So I'm going to put those down. Now I have to make the signs work. 3 times 7 makes 21, but 3 and 7 positive can't add to -10. But if they're both negative, they're still going to multiply to the positive 21, and those will add to the -10. So these 2 guys are what are the numbers that are going to go in the parenthesis. Like that. Now, it's always a good idea to FOIL to check, and I think on your practice test I'll tell you where I want you to do that. FOILing out, I get x squared minus 7x minus 3x, right, those are going to add, plus 21, x squared minus 10x plus 21. Boom. All right, there's my answer. So that's just a straight crisscross problem. Example 2. Let's go with 5x squared minus 8x minus 4. See, the hard thing with factoring is when well, it's hard when you're doing this kind of problem by itself. But now when they're all the different types mixed together, it's really, you really got to stay. You got to kind of really keep on it. So looking at this, there's no greatest common factor. Special pattern, it could only be a perfect square. And I noticed that 4 is a square, but 5 isn't. So perfect squares out. Next step, crisscross. The problem with crisscross is I've got this annoying number right there. That's going to make crisscross not work out. So we're going to just go to trial and error. That means 2 parentheses. The first 2 have to multiply to the first term, so 5x and x. The last two have to multiply to this number. And remember, I'm not going to look at the signs. I could do 4 and 1. I could do 2 and 2. I generally like to split rather than do the 4 and the 1 first. Okay, now let's just check. 2x, 10x. Can I get to a negative 8x? Or just an 8x from a 2 and a 10? Yes, I can get to 8 from 2 and a 10 by subtraction. So I want, it's a negative 8. That means I need to put the negative there because positive 2x, this is going to make a negative 2 times 5x, negative 10. So 2 and negative 10 add to negative 8. Okay, so I'm going to FOIL to check it now. 5x squared. The outer is negative 10 plus 2x, and we already checked that, negative 8x, and minus 4 for the last. And that works. There's my answer. But if you don't get it the first time, don't say prime and move on and don't stop. You've got to try different things and try different combinations. And that's why it's called trial and error, because you're going to make errors and then you got to go back and try something new. Okay, example 3. It's okay to mess up. Just stick with it. Let's go with, okay, I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball at you here. Now, step 1, don't skip steps. Step 1 says look for GCF. Well, I'm noticing these are even numbers. All 3 are even numbers. That tells me they're divisible by 2. So I do have a GCF and I need to pull it out first. So I'm going to go 2 and put my parenthesis. This step is only a GCF step. Don't try to combine steps together. Now, what's gonna be left if I pull out a 2? X squared plus 2 times what makes 10x? 5x plus 2 times what makes 12? 6. Now what you want to do, so we did a GCF. It's not a special pattern, so I can skip that. I'm looking here and it has 3 terms. So now I'm thinking, well, this might be a crisscross problem, right? This 2 is on the outside of a parenthesis. So really, if I look inside the parenthesis, that's what I have. That, I'm going to try crisscross on this. This might factor farther. So, and we haven't done one where you have to pull out a GCF and use crisscross together. So let's go ahead, make our crisscross. Last number, middle number. What 2 things can multiply to 6 but add to 5? Everything's positive. 2 times 3 makes 6. 2 plus 3 makes 5. So my answer, see how this is going to the 2 parentheses now. X times x. 2 and 3 go in the parenthesis. And don't leave off your 2. That 2 is on the outside. The greatest common factor is part of it. So you have 3 pieces there. Okay, we're putting a lot of things together. Example 4. Let's see, we did, which one did we just do? We did that one. Did we do this one here? Yep. All right, we're gonna go with 3x squared plus 18x minus 21. Step 1, look for a GCF. Well, 3 goes into 18, 3 goes into 21. I can pull out a 3. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. 3, that's gonna leave me x squared plus 6x minus 7. Now, look at what you have left. 3 terms. It can't be a perfect square because 7 doesn't have a square root. It could be crisscross, right? This 3, like this problem was trial and error because there's a number directly in front of the x squared. There is no number. If I just look in the parenthesis, that's what we're looking at. There is no number there but a 1. So that could be a crisscross problem. So the -7 goes at the end. The 6 goes there. I need 2 numbers that multiply to the -7 that will add to make a 6. There's only 2 numbers that can multiply to 7. It's 1 and 7. Let's figure out the signs now. One of them has to be negative to make it multiply to a negative. It's got to be the 1 because those two have to add to +6. So when I put it all together, this 3 is still on the outside. X times x makes my x squared -1 plus 7. And there we go. Okay, so that one had 2 steps in it. We're going to do one more. Like I said, if you need help, just stop in at between 2 and 3 on Teams. You should have that on your iPad. You can ask me questions. Let's do 9x squared y plus 12xy plus 4y. Okay, looking, step 1, look for a GCF. I notice there's a y in all 3 of these terms. I need to pull that out. There's no number that they have in common though. The y is coming out. What's left? 9x squared plus 12x plus 4. Okay, the next step says look for a special pattern. I notice that the 2 ends here are squares. I can do that. 3x. So do you remember what this is called? This looks like a perfect square, but we have to make sure the middle term checks. 3x times 2 is 6x. If I double it, it's 12x, and that checks out. This is going to go to then y times, remember perfect square? 1 parenthesis squared. 3x, first sign, 2 squared. It's got a y on the outside. All right, basically we just threw some GCFs in here and just reviewed a couple. We reviewed trial and error and crisscross. All righty.